So we've been talking about the spiritual aspects of indigenous people. We're going to continue that discussion today. Everything that you see over here in the showcases is considered medicine. The beadwork is all considered medicine. The moccasins there with the thunderbirds on them, all considered medicine. If you go to powwows, you're going to see these roaches up top. They're on the top of people's heads. That second shelf there, that's all kind of contemporary artwork from the Pine Ridge area. All of that stuff is considered medicine. All of the pottery, all of the stuff, the drum, the birch bark stuff, the arrows, all of that stuff is all considered what we would call medicine. When you receive gifts for doing things in indigenous culture, it's considered a medicine. When I give people things like maybe eagle feathers or hawk feathers or something like that, it's all considered medicine. The spirit inside those things is a spirit that's given to you to help you. When I issue a name, and I'm going to talk in just a second about a naming ceremony, that name is considered medicine. That is supposed to help the people who are you giving that name to. So, the naming ceremony. Many, many years ago, must have been about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all of a sudden we get a knock on the door. And we're not really expecting anybody, so we're kind of scrambling a little bit. We go and open the door. It's an old friend of mine who has her daughter with her. And the funny thing is I've known her for 10 years, and I never knew she even had a daughter, which was really strange. But she said, my daughter is really feeling upset right now. And my daughter is depressed, and she's talking about suicide. And I'm like, okay, come on in. So, she comes in at the front door of my house at the time, up in Minnesota, was over there. And we had a couch that sat right here. We had a chair over on this smaller wall. We had another chair over here. The TV's over there. We had a bunch of junk. And my dog, who was a basset hound, was laying right there. And that's about as far as he moved throughout the day. So, we're all sitting there after a while. I invite him in, have him sit on the couch. And on the couch over here, the person that I knew, Rhonda, was on this side of the couch, and her daughter sat way on the other side, which I thought was really strange to begin with. And I'm sitting in the chair, and my ex-wife was sitting here, and I went and sat over here, and I brought my bundle in, and my pipe and all that kind of stuff. And I started to ask her, well, what's going on? And it was like pulling teeth. And I was trying to just get her to start talking. I asked her, well, who are you anyway? I mean, I've never met you. I've known your mom for a long time and never even knew you existed. And all she would do was tell me her name and that she went to school at the Moorhead. And it's like, okay, that's your name and I know you go to school, but who are you? I'm just trying to get her to try to expound on something, anything. And it was very, very difficult. So this went on for probably about a half an hour. And it was incredibly, excruciatingly painful. So I said, is there anything that you can tell me? I mean, I'm not even sure what's going on here. Why did you come here today? And her mother was actually speaking for her, and I said to Rhonda, just, let's let her say it. And it was then that she said, out of nowhere, well, I had a dream one time. I said, well, you had a dream. All right, tell me about your dream. And I thought it would be like a dream from when she was a kid or something, but it turns out it was a fairly frequent dream. And she started telling me this dream. She said that she was walking along a place in St. Cloud that we call the Beaver Islands. It's right below a dam, and there's all kinds of different islands situated on the Mississippi River, and you can walk from bridge to bridge in there, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. She said, I was walking on the Beaver Islands Trail, and I crossed over one bridge, came to another bridge, and was going to cross over, but right at the top of the bridge, there was a huge turtle. I said, oh, a turtle. Go ahead. I shouldn't have interrupted her because it took her a while to get going again. So she starts talking about seeing this turtle in her dream, and she said the turtle had a huge head and a big, huge shell. It says, well, what was significant about the turtle? What makes you remember the turtle? And she says, well, in front of me, the turtle kept getting gradually smaller until it got so small that it fell through the boards in the bridge and into the water, and it swam away. And she said, then I woke up. I went, oh. I said, well, what color was the turtle? Green. Was there anything distinctive about the turtle? No. Okay. What about the bridge? Did you see colors in your dream? Yeah, she said she saw colors. She just said the turtle was green. So you saw colors. What color was the sky? She said, I think the sky was blue. Are there trees around? Because there's trees all over those islands, right? Yeah, we saw trees. I said, what color were the trees? Green. So there's a lot of green, right? And she said, come to think of it, even though I couldn't see myself, and you don't see yourself in your dreams, I don't know if you know that or not, but you'll never see yourself in your dreams. It'll always come from your perspective. And you'll never see a shadow in a dream either, by the way. So, she's talking like this, and the color green comes up, and she says, even the water was kind of green. I said, oh, that's interesting. Anything else I said? No. Okay. And just like that, her mother Rhonda chimes in. And Rhonda says, that's weird because I had a dream kind of like that. I said, okay, tell me about it. Rhonda used to go up to Lake of the Woods, and we used to set Rhonda out at the same time that we went out and fasted. Rhonda would go on the fasts up there as well. And what happens on those fasts is you get put out on an island. And on that island, which is very, very isolated, the first island that we go to is 15 miles from anything. So you're in the middle of this giant lake, and Lake of the Woods is huge. It's this giant lake. Anybody been there? Nobody's been there? Holy crap. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth. So you go onto this, onto these islands. What about the Boundary Waters? Anybody been to you been to the Boundary Waters? Wow. You're so close. The island that I used to go on is called Eagle Island. That's almost 30 miles out, right? 30 miles out into a lake. That's a huge lake. And that's in the middle of the lake, so it's giant. So Rhonda said that when the old man dropped her off on the island, he said to work your way up around the hills and get to the top of the hill so you can see everything. Because as you start to go through your fast, these dreams and visions are going to come to you, and you need to see long distances. And when you can also see when boats are coming and things, so you can kind of keep an eye on things. So she starts talking about every morning she'd work her way back down around the hill and come down to the lake and sit on the rocks, because it's really rocky. And there was this turtle every single morning sitting on top of the rocks. I said, a turtle? What was the turtle doing? She said, the turtle was talking to me. What was the turtle saying? Well, the turtle was telling me about how to go through the fast. The turtle was telling me that I shouldn't be afraid. I heard the turtle story. It's a very, very sacred story, by the way. It's about Turtle Island, land, and that kind of thing. I said, oh, and you came down every morning and the turtle talked to you? She said, yeah, every morning the turtle gave me a different teaching until she had 4 teachings. So you can tell right now that this is an incredibly spiritual event for her. And just like that, you know, after she was done, my ex-wife chimes in. And she said, well, that's weird, because when I went up there on the fast, she said, I was in my tent and I fell asleep, she said, and this turtle, this painted turtle, came walking toward me and started talking to me. She says, well, what did the turtle say? I said, she said, I don't know. She said, I wasn't really listening. So, I kind of let that one go, but again, another story about a turtle, right? Okay, so, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm thinking, you know, just a couple weeks prior to that, I went out to St. John's University. And St. John's University, has anybody been there? Nobody? My gosh. St. John's University is where I go to see that priest friend of mine. And when we go out there, we usually I like to walk around the lake. Because on the other side of the lake, there's a little stone chapel that was built a long, long time ago. The interesting thing is it was built by Indian people who were enslaved by the church, And as the Indian people died, they were buried underneath the church. There's all kinds of freaky, people get these freaky myths going on out there, that sort of thing. So I'm taking a walk around there, and I'm by myself on this day. Actually, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm driving out there, and as you drive in the back way, which I like to come in, it's a zigzaggy road that goes through a pretty thick forest, and it's not unusual to see deer standing on the road. But on this day, I had to stop my car because right in the middle of the road, there was a giant snapping turtle. And I honked and it wasn't moving, and I honked again and it wasn't moving. This turtle was probably about that big. So I got out and I looked at it, and it looked pretty docile. It wasn't going to take my leg off or anything. And I kind of kicked it a little bit. It didn't move. And by the way, if it would have, I would have been out of there like really quick, because this turtle had a head on it like that. So I thought, oh, okay. So I went around the back of the turtle, which you always should do, picked him up by the shell, and carried the turtle down to the lake, which was a task, by the way, because there was no trail. And set the turtle in the lake, and the turtle swam away. And everything was cool. So I get back in my car, and I drive over to the parking area, and then I start working my way on the trail around the lake. And I used to go out there a lot just to, like, think. You ever do that? Anybody here ever think? I try. Certainly not critically think, right? So I'm walking out there, and you can tell that it's going to rain, right? It's getting kind of humid. It's really hot. You can see in the distance that the thunderheads are starting to build. They were probably over South Dakota at the time. And I'm walking along the trail, and I'm kind of looking at that, kind of pacing my time, that sort of thing. But right before it rains, one of the things that you're going to know, or you should know, is that turtles will jump up on logs and get all the sun they can get before the rain comes. Because when they go back in the water's going to be cloudy, right? And it's going to be all stirred up, so they like to sunbathe. So as I'm walking, I'm seeing the most amazing sight. I'm seeing hundreds of turtles all over the logs. They're all over the place. I mean, I would have never imagined there would have been that many turtles in the lake, but they're all over the place. So, when events like this start happening, you realize that something's up. So, I took out my tobacco and did some prayers for the turtles. I even sung them a turtle song as I was walking out there. I got out to the church, so I turned around and I walked all the way back out there. And on the way back, I looked down at the lake, and there were no turtles out. Zero. I didn't see a single turtle the whole time. I'm thinking, holy crap. How can we go from hundreds to zero, in a matter of half hour? So I thought that was very strange. So I walked back to my car, got in my car, and I'm on my way out, and that turtle's in the road again. Probably sunning itself. It's kind of big to be on a log, so probably crawls to the middle of the road where there's no trees, so it could sun itself. So I get out and I kind of do the same thing, and the interesting thing this time is I wasn't quite holding it right. It was about this, maybe this big, you hold it up to your stomach, right? But I was a little high with my hands, and the turtle's head came out like right there. And his mouth is, it's huge, and I'm like, don't bite me. And then just like that, the turtle leaned forward and was actually looking where we were going. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I walked onto the lake once again. I put the turtle in, and the turtle swims away. I get back in my car, and I'm driving home. And on the back way, it goes through a place up there called St. Joseph. What I'm looking for is what we call clusters. Okay, back to my living room. All of a sudden, the stories are told, and I was telling that one. And all of a sudden, the girl starts crying. I'm thinking, well, what the hell? And I ask her point blank, what's going on here? Why are you here? And her mom chimes in and says, Gary, we came to get her an Indian name. She's really, really struggling right now. I said, well, you probably could have said that a long time ago, But it's a good thing that she didn't, because she didn't, the stories came out. So I take out my pipe, we load the pipe, we do the prayers, we do the songs. It takes about an hour and a half, and after that, my son comes into the house, and he's carrying a turtle that he found in the room. A little mud turtle with the pointed nose. Cute little guy. And he wants to keep it as a pet. He's a little young, he's young. I said, no, we're not going to keep no turtle as a pet. Turned out later that night, though, he actually had that turtle in his bed. Yeah, now you know what I've been coping with all these years. So, we do all the ceremonial stuff, and then we talk about it and all this kind of thing, and we get to the point where I have to start thinking about this Indian name and what makes sense. What do you think makes sense? What's your Indian name going to be? Antelope? Who said antelope? Nice guess. What's your name going to be? Makanakikwe. Makanaki, turtle, Ikwe, woman. Makanakikwe, turtle woman. So when you issue somebody an Indian name, then you have to do some explanation. And what happened that day was what's supposed to happen. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it's just like that. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for some sort of sign, some kind of cluster to occur at a given particular time that makes sense and has a connection to that person. Different clusters to come together on different levels, the spiritual, the emotional, the intellectual, and the physical. There should be one thing from each of those levels. And clearly, that the stories that came up, there was one thing from each of those levels. It was very clear to me that that was supposed to be her Indian name. So what her duty is now, is her duty is to attach herself to the turtle. She's supposed to learn everything there is about that turtle and use the characteristics of the turtle to shape her own personal characteristics. What's a turtle? So, that's something that she needs to think about. What gifts now is she going to gradually obtain and recognize and realize? Right? What else is going to go on? What else is there about a turtle? A turtle's very, very staunch. Turtles live a long time. Turtles are very, very stubborn. Turtles are a great help. They eat lots of stuff that may not be good for people when they swim. I mean, all kinds of stuff. What about the number 13? The spaces on a turtle's back. She has to learn about all that stuff. As she's learning about it, she's going to increase her knowledge about herself. Because that's that medicine that came. That's her assignment for the rest of her life. She's got to start recognizing what it is about her that's reminiscent and visible in the spirituality, the emotion, the intellect, and the physical beings of a turtle. The other thing I had to do was give her a gift of a turtle. So I gave her a gift. I gave her a turtle shell shape. She took the turtle. She just took it, and she puts her head down and she just starts to weep. And again, it's the same thing that happens at that sweat lodge, right? When people come for the very first time, Indian people come to a sweat lodge and they see this. Remember when I was talking about this? All of a sudden they're like, this belongs to me? And all of a sudden they've got that connection, bang. They've got a connection to who they are. And all of a sudden that's what happens with her. It's medicine. All of a sudden she starts feeling almost immediately like she has ownership of something incredibly sacred. Something that belongs to her. Something that's centuries old. That she actually, it's tangible. She can hold that turtle shell shaker. She'll always be reminded of that turtle. So she's got one heck of an assignment because she's got to figure out how that turtle relates to her life. And she's got to start looking at those characteristics. Turtles swim, right? She's a great swimmer. She was on a swim team in high school. There's all kinds of little things that are very, very interesting. I got to tell you one more story about the turtles. Shortly after that, I know that it was confirmed because we're up in Lake Kenora, up in Canada. And the old man, out of nowhere, he starts talking about turtles. Because it was hatching season. Have you ever seen the hatching season for turtles? It's really cool. Turtles are little baby turtles, right? Little baby turtles with little rubber shells at that time. It's almost, as soon as the sun comes up on this particular day, we were looking down this beach, and all of a sudden the beach changed colors. The turtles just ran down the beach. Millions of them. And the funny thing is there were so many birds there that I've never seen so many birds in one place in my entire life. And I've been to the crane sanctuary in Nebraska, where there's a million birds, right? These are little birds and they're attacking the turtles. The old man says, the sad thing about this, Gary, is those birds are trying to pluck the eyes out of the turtles. I said, what? I said, yeah, that's the soft part of the turtle. And the birds wait for these turtles to hatch. They come down and they get it's a small percentage. It's 5% of the turtles. They go after the turtle's soft spot, which is their eyes, before the turtles make it to the water and they're safe, right? Well, at least safe from the birds. They got the muskies then to contend with. But they get to the water, and it's weird because out of nowhere he starts talking about this story in our lodge up there, and he says, the funny thing is the turtles will swim around blind their whole life, but they know exactly where they're going because they can see into the future and see into the past. He says, don't worry about those turtles because they don't need their eyes. I'm like, crap. I wish I would have known that when I issued that name. Most of the turtles make it, by the way. Sometimes you'll see a turtle flying away in the talons of a bird. And the eagles will come around too. They're after the bigger turtles. Eagles and hawks are incredible hunters. When I got my first Indian name, there's all kinds of metaphoric connections that I had to learn. Whenever I go on trips, inevitably I'm going to see hawks here and hawks there. You know, hawks on the fence post or on the light post or something. To me, that's the best sign I can possibly see because they're guiding my way. When I go on these long, I used to go on a lot of long canoe trips and stuff. Whenever I see hawks, it was like a good sign. It made me feel good, and literally my blood pressure would go down. I mean, it was one of those things. One of the things that I have to do is metaphorically think about those hawks. And what I'm thinking about are all of the characteristics of the hawks. The hawks have great eyesight, right? They can see 8 times better than a human being. So you metaphorically think about that. Foresight, right? Foresight. And hawks are teachers. What am I? Chopped liver? Well, some people would say so. So, hawks are very powerful animals. It's my job to teach all the young kids how to hunt. So, and girls. But hawks are very, very good hunters. Very high flying animals. You ever see hawks? They're really high in the sky, right? The only bird who flies higher than a hawk is an eagle. And eagles are part of the hawk family. Very, very graceful birds. Very fast flying birds. Beautiful birds, too. See, it's like the only claim to fame that I get. The only time anybody's ever called me beautiful. Gary, you look like a hawk. Well, thank you. That dead one I just hit back on the road. You're real funny. Funny guy. So, that's the kind of thing that you do. You look for those kinds of characteristics and you go through your life trying to see how they fit. Trying to emulate that kind of thing in yourself. That's what the Indian name does. And I'll tell you, it gives you guidance. It gives you absolute, unequivocal guidance. Medicine. Medicine, 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 medicine. It's funny because people used to come in and I used to tell them that my story, which is much, much longer, by the way, because when you're given your Indian name, you're given that story, right? There's all kinds of ways to give an Indian name. At my initial naming ceremony, my elder is telling this long story about a dream that he had 3 times. And then that dream would be my story. He's passing that on to me because he dreamt about my Indian name. So it's interesting because they give you this little quiz after where everybody, and there was about 100 people at my naming ceremony, everybody comes around, and then you're under pressure. He's asking you elements of that story that you were supposed to remember. And then you have Ashkabewas there too. The Ashkabewas, as I mentioned earlier, are people who are they're supposed to be closer than blood. They're people who are supposed to keep you on track and keep you attached to your Indian naming story throughout your entire life. So they all know the story too. It's really an interesting process. Then I've got to feed everybody by myself, so I had to make all the feast food, which is rice, Wild rice, for the Anishinaabe, it's wild rice, blueberries, corn, and venison, or walleye. It's very, very deep. We talked about the spirit before, right? Why is it here? Because if we're at the front of that vision of light that goes off into space, you remember that conversation? Our spirits are here. Everybody's always here, either physically, emotionally, intellectually, or in spirit. And when, after you pass, you cross over, that's the term we use, into the spirit world. So you're here spiritually. It goes over a 4-day period and winds up someplace out here. So, you're up here, this is your soul. This is a person that died. When you die, in indigenous cultures, there's a 4-day period that you travel. And you're sung over to the other side in a very, very kind of elaborate funeral ceremony, at least for the Anishinaabe. So there's certain songs that need to be sung during this period, during this period, during this period, and then finally you're there. Your soul's there. That's where these people go. That's where he was heading. There's no hope. He tried throughout most of his life to get rid of alcoholism and could not. Went through the ceremony and never had the inkling for another drink ever again. One person I can tell you that went through the ceremony was sexually abused very, very brutally in a boarding school. Went through the ceremony and so these kinds of things are what we're trying to get back to. These are the kinds of things that are working. And unfortunately, not a lot of Indian people have access. That's the bad part. A lot of Indian people are just so lost today that they don't even know where to go to find elders who will do this kind of thing. And there's many, 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 many different ceremonies out there. Very, very sacred ceremonies. Very, very old ceremonies. And when you're at a point in Indian culture where you're dealing with chronic alcoholism at every turn, there comes a time when you have to start revealing these things and help people. We have to start helping our people before there's nobody left to help. None of this is personal. I don't know. That's up to you. I'll never ever tell you that your faith is good, bad, or indifferent. I'll never tell you not to believe in anything like that. So I'm just telling you what we do. I don't know about you. That's up to you and your faith. See what I'm saying? If this is something that you don't believe in, then don't believe in it. If this is something you do believe in, then believe in it. If Catholicism is something you believe in it, then I'm the first one to say go for it. Take that path. Well, here's the thing. It's just like the different tribes, from my perspective. I'm only speaking from my perspective. I'm not speaking from any other Indian perspective. Okay? But there's different ways to do everything. What I believe in is irrelevant. I have to walk a very careful line because I can't be persuading you that this is your truth. I can't tell you that. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I can tell you that it's our truth. I can speak for myself, but I can't speak for anybody else.
So, I'm going to ask you that. So, do you believe this for other Indian cultures as well, even though they might have different beliefs, like those indigenous tribes?
I only believe what my elders have taught me.
Okay.
If other elders teach it differently, that's perfectly legitimate for them. So indigenous people also do other ceremonies. Women do very, very special ceremonies as well. Most women indigenous tribes all over the entire world do a thing called a moon ceremony. A moon ceremony is always done by women because of that connection with the moon, and Grandmother Moon. When I comb my hair, our hair is never thrown away. We always keep it, and then my spouse would get rid of it and burn it through a ceremony in the sacred fire. And we always make sure that we take care of that kind of thing. Women do a whole bunch of women's songs, and that's when they do a lot of the teaching about women things that men shouldn't be talking about. And they're usually very, very powerful kinds of things, not really something that a man's worthy of talking about. There's also hunting ceremonies. The first deer that I ever hunted, and we don't call it hunting, by the way, but the first deer that I ever hunted, my job was to take that last breath of the deer inside of me and then release it. So you just inhale that deer and then the deer's last breath and then release it. Buffalo, I'm not sure if the Lakota ate their buffalo part or not, but that's very, very important. It's part of that process and part of the respect. Whenever we do hunt and get deer and things, we always use everything, everything. The bones are used either ceremonially, or the bones are used for like cleaning utensils for animals, stuff like that. The sinew, even the sinew that connects the muscle, is used for making things like dream catchers. And anything that we don't use, we do use because we bring it and put it out in the woods for the wolves. And the wolves really like it too. We do that up at Namanji in northern Minnesota, where there's a ton of wolves. And at night you can hear the wolves jumping up on top of your shack and walking around and stuff. And by the way, wolves don't hurt people. Wolves are pack animals, as are coyotes. You're never going to see a coyote by themselves, unless the coyote's really sick and been cast off by what we call the tribe, by the group.